Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We join you today from the North Central Research Station at Lahoma for the annual wheat field tour. Our first stop is our annual Varieties Talk with our Extension Small Grain Specialist, Jeff Edwards.
We're here at Lahoma and we have several wheat varieties. Actually, Jeff, you guys have all of the wheat varieties grown by OSU in the state, right?
We do. At this location, we have 54 wheat varieties, I think. One thing that makes this location a little unique is that here in Chickasha, we have every variety here without a fungicide and with the fungicide. So we can tell what impact a fungicide makes by variety.
What kind of differences are you seeing in the varieties?
Well, we're seeing some fairly large differences this year. As a whole, this is going to be a year for later maturing wheat varieties. Okay. We had some freeze injury early, and that got our earlier maturing varieties. They took it a little harder than some of the later maturing varieties. We've had a fairly cool spring. We had some water, some rainfall that came in time, but a little late. Right. And all of these things have benefited our later maturing varieties. So I think they're going to shine this year. We're also seeing a lot of differences in terms of disease resistance and what effect that fungicide is going to have on varieties like Ruby Lee.
Okay, well let's start with Ruby Lee. What are we seeing?
Well, Ruby Lee is kind of a racehorse variety. Right. And we knew from the day it was released that it never had a strong disease resistance package. So it's a variety, if you plant Ruby Lee, you're locked into a fungicide application more or less. It will be one of those varieties that without a fungicide at this location, you know, maybe 50 bushel wheat here. With the fungicide, it might be 75 bushel wheat.
Okay, let's walk down the way here and look at a couple of other ones. Here's Gallagher.
Gallagher and Iba, they are both the sons of Duster. Gallagher is a few days earlier than Duster. In my opinion, Gallagher's the first variety that we've had that I would call a Duster replacement. Okay. The closest thing to a Duster replacement we have, it has acid soil tolerance just like Duster, excellent forage production. It'll even top Duster in terms of forage production. Okay. And then we have the other Duster offspring, which would be Iba. Now Iba is a couple of days later than Duster, a little more late maturing, is not tolerant of acid soil conditions, does not have Hessian fly resistance, but it is a little later maturing, not quite as susceptible to spring freeze injury, good grazing variety, rebounds from grazing very well, and has a little broader area of adaptation.
Okay, and what else do we have?
Oh, Bentley, yes. Newest variety. This is a variety in the OSU varieties that has the best drought tolerance. Okay. Very drought tolerant variety, just released. It was been out here a couple of years as experimental OK09125, named after W.D. Bentley, the first director of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service. I'll look for it to top some trials this year. Okay.
And what else do we have?
The last one here in the OSU lineup is Double Stop CL Plus. Right. This is a 2-gene Clearfield variety. Double Stop is really neat in that it is a great variety outside of having the Clearfield trait. Right. We would have released it even without that. Pretty good disease package. You'll find some stripe rust on it, a little bit of leaf rust, but pretty good disease package.
So really 2016 was the year of the later variety.
It is. I think it's going to turn out that way, especially the temperatures we've been having. We've been out here at this field day before and it's been in the mid to upper 90s. Yeah. And that's terrible for grain fill and wheat. The other thing that affects grain fill and wheat are the nighttime temperatures. We have what we call maintenance respiration. So the plants it's using energy at night, and the hotter it is, the more it uses just that does not go into grain fill. Mother Nature is setting us up for a really nice wheat crop.
And one other piece of news here at the field day, you're actually going to be able to commit full strength to being a department head.
This will be my final Lahoma field day wheat tour. We have our new small grains extension specialist on board, Dr. David Marburger. Our growers around the state will be seeing a lot more of Dr. Marburger.
Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure all of these years, and he's the outgoing small grains extension specialist and now the department head of plant soil sciences here at Oklahoma State University.
We're at Brett Carver's stop now to talk a little bit about wheat breeding. And Brett, your newest variety that the wheat breeding team has released is Stardust. Tell us a little bit about it.
Stardust is a little bit different. It's out of the market class hard white. So instead of the usual hard-red winter wheat, Stardust is hard white, which means it might be used in other applications than what would be used for hard-red winter, particularly whole grain type products, whole wheat.
And this grows well in this part of the state.
That's right. It can work in the Panhandle, but it can also work downstate where it might be closer to the point of which it would be milled.
In terms of the hard white variety, what do you see kind of as the next step after Stardust?
Well, we always have new experimental lines in the lineup, in the pipeline, and so we do actually have one on display here for the field day.
Okay.
Let's take a look.
Let's do that. Tell us about this one.
Okay, this is an experimental line. It's not under any kind of release proposal just yet, but it's in that stage of selection where we think it might have commercial potential. So we're trying to purify the line. Right now it is mixed with red and white kernels. We want to pull out both the red and the white kernels and keep them separate so we have two lines that come from this one line. And the reason we want to do that is it has such high potential for yield production. Again, just like Stardust, right here in the main body of the state. Just like Stardust, also it has one of the same parents as Stardust, OK Rising. A little bit different parentage on the other side. But I'm really excited about this experimental line. You can see across the canopy how full it is, and the heads are, it's going to provide a very nice yield. In fact, I can tell you, since 2012, averaged across the last, 4 years of yield data, this has been the highest yielding experimental line in the program. Again, across those 4 years. So we need to take a very close look, see what it might do for our Oklahoma wheat producers.
And now we have some of the Clearfield and Double Stop relatives gathered up, right?
Yes, we do, and we have two on display today. And the familiarity of Double Stop should be pretty high to our wheat producers, but just as a reminder, Double Stop is one of the Clearfield varieties and 2-gene Clearfield varieties that enables wheat producers to control some difficult weeds, particularly feral rye, but another one being jointed goat grass. Double Stop was released a few years ago. We accelerated the breeding on Double Stop and released it as fast as we could do it and still have a stable line with the right genetics for the Clearfield system. But in so doing, the line was a little bit less uniform than the typical variety that we released. So we wanted to improve upon that uniformity, but also at the same time maybe improve upon the yield potential. And that led to this selection from Double Stop, the 09915C-1. And I can say that without a doubt, this is a higher yielding line than its parent Double Stop, to the tune of about 7 bushels per acre statewide, at least in 2015. Better stripe rust resistance, same just about everything else, but better stripe rust resistance and powdery mildew. Okay. Really glad to see this one come along. But we may not limit our choice to that particular experimental line. We have another one that didn't come directly out of Double Stop, but through an independent set of crosses, very similar to Double Stop. Double Stop has 3 parents. This particular line features 2 of those 3 parents. And you can see a little bit of the difference. The first one that stands out would be the earlier maturity. Double Stop is on the later end of our varieties in terms of when it finishes and when it flowers in the spring. This is several days earlier than Double Stop, but I think it's as high yielding, if not higher yielding, than Double Stop. Right now, the battle is between these two experimentals. Which one wins, we'll let you know this summer.
It's a great matchup then.
That's right.
Okay, Brett Carver, great information on the future of the work of the Wheat Improvement Team. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
We're inching closer to the 2016 wheat harvest, and Kim, how's supply and demand looking right now?
Well, the WASDE report came out this last week. World production was higher than I expected. You know, we talked about it being around 26.1 billion bushels a couple months ago. Of course, weather changed around the world in both Oklahoma, the U.S., and in the foreign countries. The USDA had world wheat production at 26.7 billion bushels.
Wow.
It was 27 billion last year, which was a record. The next record before that was 26.7, so we're essentially the second highest on record in world production. Oklahoma production was less than expected, but remember, our price is determined on the world market. Also, with that increased production of the last 3 or almost 4 years of record or near record production, world ending stocks are looking at going up over 9 billion bushels. So wow. It's at a record ending stocks projected again this next year.
So what does all that wheat mean for the price of wheat in Oklahoma?
Well, wheat prices as in the United States are determined on the world market,
right.
Because of about 50% of our wheat or more goes to the export market. So higher production, higher ending stocks means lower prices, which we're experiencing now. You know, we got Oklahoma prices in the 370 to 390 area. You watch that, the price movement on the futures contracts, the KC contracts. Oh, they're the nearby July is around 350. I think it's got a range right now between 450, between $4.40 and $4.60. I think it's a sideways pattern in there. You're looking at the basis, say since August, it's declined about 35 cents a bushel, so we've lost on the basis, and I think that's because of higher production and the amount of wheat we got left in the bin. So right now I think there's about 50 cents, 55 cents downside potential in wheat prices between now and say July 1. 25 of that on the 20 or 25 on the futures contract and 20 or 25 on the basis. We'll lose the basis if we have a big crop and if we don't have test weight.
Now, as the wheat comes rolling in, there's a lot of opportunity for that price to be kind of docked down a little bit.
Yeah, if you look at dockage, the discounts are relatively high. You've got the discounts for dockage start at 1%. Of course, all dockage is removed from weight. They're going to pay for the wheat, but not the trash.
Right.
At 1%, it's 5 cents. At 1.3, it's 7 cents. At 1.6, it's 9 cents. At 2, it's 12 cents. So pretty good discounts there. Test weight discount, that's a great discount. Starts at 59.5 cents. At 58, it's 1 cent. At 57.5, it's 2 cents, and goes on down from there. Foreign material, rye and wheat, which is a problem.
Right.
Big discounts there. Starts at 0.5%, which is not much. That's 2 cents.
Yeah.
0.8, 6 cents. 1.1, 12 cents. 1.4, 18 cents. 2.1, 24 cents. 2.6, 30 cents. 3.1, 50 cents. And it gets worse from there. So the discounts are serious this year because the market wants a quality product. They want a clean product.
So they bring the wheat in, and obviously, well, if they don't sell, then what kind of strategy should they look at?
Well, I think this year that if you can afford 50 cents downside risk, if prices go up, they're going to go up in the August, September, October time period. The higher prices will be the results of losing foreign wheat production, and we won't know that until that time period. I think if you can afford the risk, I would look at storing and selling later in the marketing year. If I needed some cash, or the third, I'd probably go 1/4 of it at harvest, and the other 3/4 staggered in over the September through December time period. Or if taxes aren't a problem, I'd stagger it into September through the February time period, because we could get a bump in the November, December from Argentina and Australia, and maybe problems with the upcoming 2017 crop.
Okay, there you have it. All of that from Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
There's been some discussion amongst scientists and ranchers as well about what's the best target weight to have replacement heifers in as they go into their first breeding season. For years, the recommendation stood that we should have heifers at 65% of their mature weight when we wanted to have a high percentage of them cycling and therefore give them a chance to get bred in that first breeding season. Well, research here at Oklahoma State University just a few years ago took a real close look at this particular question. You see, what they did was measure when heifers actually started to cycle or reach puberty and recorded their weights, and then followed those heifers into and through adulthood. So they knew at age 5, age 6, age 7 what their actual mature weight would be when they were a body condition score 5 cow. Now, then they could look back and see what percentage of that mature weight they were actually at when they started to cycle. And as you look at this particular graphic, you can see the breakdown of the percentage of heifers that started to cycle depending upon the percent of mature weight that they were in. For instance, if they only weighed about 50% of their eventual mature weight, only 12% of those heifers were cycling at that point of time. Now, as we get into 55% of the mature weight, now we add another 35% of the heifers for a total then of 47%, still less than half, are cycling by the time they weigh 55% of their mature weight. As we go up another increment, then we're talking about the 60% mark. And in the case of a cow that's going to be 1,200 pounds in terms of eventual body weight, now you're talking about a 720-pound heifer. If we have those heifers weighing 720 pounds, then we would expect at this point in time 91% of those to be cycling and to be ready to be bred. I think it's good to understand this concept of what the mature weight is on those cows and what the percentage of that mature weight must be for those heifers to be cycling and have a chance to be bred in that first breeding season. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Time to talk cattle markets now with Daryl Peel, our livestock marketing specialist. And Daryl, we've seen a bump in prices recently. Is that what we would normally see this time of year?
It's really not a normal seasonal behavior. We've seen some changes in timing this year, and I think really it's being led by the fed cattle market. We're seeing an industry that's working quite a bit different this year compared to last year. We've had larger slaughter rates a little bit early this year. That gave us a little bump in supply, which initially put pressure on prices, but then we're following that now with this sort of unusual strength in prices.
Talk about some of those year-to-year differences and kind of what the comparison is.
You know, a year ago at this time, and really for most all of 2015, the feedlot industry had an incentive to slow things down, delay marketings. Cattle got big, carcass weights were heavy. What we've seen this spring is a very different situation. We've got discounts on the futures for the second half of the year. So feedlots and packers both have an incentive to move cattle quicker. So we've slaughtered them earlier, which again did put more supply in the market initially back in late March and April, but it's also pulled carcass weights down dramatically. And so, you know, again, the industry is operating at a faster pace right now, if you will. The turnover rate's quicker, and it's just an industry, it's more like what we would expect long-term for the industry to behave, but not something we've seen for many months now.
And then where does demand fit into all of this?
Well, obviously, when we increased those slaughter rates, say a month ago, there was a little bulge in supplies, and prices did go down. But the good side of that is that we did move that meat through the system. There appears to be a fair amount of indication that we forward priced a lot of meat. Retailers took advantage of that. So the demand is there. We're probably going to see an opportunity for some decent featurings, taking advantage of that bigger supply and those lower prices as we go into Memorial Day and then on into Labor Day and Father's Day in June.
And then do you think these trends will continue for the second half of the year?
Well, what we're doing now has the potential to really set us up for a little bit better situation from a supply standpoint. In particular, by pulling these carcass weights down now, seasonally carcass weights come down, but they've come down more dramatically than we've seen the last couple of years. And if we continue that, we may take them below year earlier levels here for a while, and that could extend on into the rest of the year. So we have the potential here to moderate increased cattle numbers, which we know are building, with less carcass weights, and that'll moderate the total increase in beef supplies and help support prices as we go through the year.
Okay, great information, Daryl. Thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet Weather Report. Here we are in mid-May looking at a week with declining temperatures and still lots of rain. The rain is expected in May, the cold temperatures aren't. On a 3-day rainfall map through Wednesday of this week, we can see those green areas that had an inch or more of rain. Miami had the highest rainfall amount, 3 93/100 inches of rain. Idabel, which is also on the eastern side of the state, surprisingly was the low rainfall area with only 0.04 of an inch. That rainfall added to our soil moisture on a map of 7-day 10-inch fractional water index changes. We can see that Freedom stayed low. It was lost 0.4 of an inch over that week. On the plus side, in the green areas, we had Hollis at 0.6 and Grandfield at 0.5. With that change in fractional water index over the week, we wanted to take a look at how that fractional water index changed as we went down in depth. Towards the surface at 4 inches for Wednesday, we can see that much of the state is dark green. Those areas at 1 or in the high numbers are really wet, good moisture. Down at 0, that's bone dry. And we can see Perkins is our low spot at 0.3 of an inch. And we've got a few other dry spots that are yellow-green on our map. A little bit farther down at 10 inches, now we start to see some areas that are really dry. Freedom comes in at 0.1. Cheyenne and Kingfisher at 0.2. So those are very, very dry on this scale. Our next level down is 24 inches, and here we see some continuation of those dry spots. Hooker and Freedom and Eric all at 0.1. Kingfisher at 0.5 or halfway down on the scale. Hollis at 0.4. Fortunately for much of the state, we're in that dark green, wetter soil pattern with good soil moisture, and this is down at the 24-inch depth. So those are our different depths. How do we look at that all together? Well, we can turn to a map of percent plant available water from the surface down to 32 inches. We can see those drier areas like Freedom at 24% of plant available water, Hooker at 36%, Kingfisher at 40%, Eric at 46%. So those are the low areas. As we move across the state, most areas have good soil moisture in that top 32 inches. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Mesonet Weather Report.
We're talking canola research now with our Extension Cropping System Specialist, Josh Lofton. Josh, you have your different varieties set up here. What are you most intrigued by this season?
Well, I tell you, the one thing we're most intrigued by is if you look at last year at this point in time, at this field day, we essentially didn't have a variety trial here. It looks great this year, and this is essentially what we're seeing across the state. Good looking variety trial with a couple of our varieties kind of standing out. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. The first one we're kind of standing right in front of. and it's our tried and true variety. Wichita came out in 1999, Kansas State variety. Still got really nice yield potential, really nice winter survival, and that's kind of what we're looking for canola. We want oil, we want yield, and we need winter survival. The next one we've gotten a lot of interest in, especially we just had our field tours. Poplar, depending on what you want to say, is one that's coming out that's getting a lot of interest. It's relatively new. I think this is only the second year we've had it in the trial. It doesn't have as good of winter survival as, let's say, something like Wichita, and it does kind of come around and it flowers relatively early. So we like to see that, and I wanted to toss that in from them boys in the Southwest. And it looks to essentially have as high yield potential as it was theory to have. The sisters, as we always say, is HC 1115 or 115 and HC 125. These are high class varieties, really strong varieties, have really good yield potential. 115 has probably one of the best stress packages that we have available. It essentially is what we like to call our thoroughbred. If you put it out there, it doesn't matter what happens that year, it's probably going to yield something. It might not blow the top off every year, but even in the most adverse conditions, we're going to get some yield from it. And it's really good stress package wise, really good yield potential. The other thing it has is a nice oil profile. We can typically get pretty decent oil, especially in a year like this where we've had really good conditions. Its sister 125 doesn't offer as much stress potential, but where it lacks in that stress potential in a year to where we have optimum conditions, that 125 is going to blow the top off yield and oil content, which is really something that we're striving for this year, especially with these conditions. The last one we wanted to talk about is the one everybody's been interested in. It's kind of taken the state by storm, and it's 4615. Really strong stress package, really high yield potential possibilities. It's one that you can have in certain fields and one that you don't want to have in certain fields, if you will. So I mean, those are kind of some of the highlights that we've seen across the state as far as our varieties.
And we're turning the corner now to harvest.
It's time to harvest. We released something on the OSUcrops.com. It's a blog that I have. Released a harvest management guide. It's time to get boots on the ground looking at swathing. If you want to swath, now's the time. If you're looking to direct harvest, now's the time to start greasing up that combine if you haven't done it already.
Thank you for the discussion. And if you want a link to the blog that Josh mentioned, just go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu. That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime online at sunup.okstate.edu. And also follow us on YouTube and social media. From the North Central Research Station at Lahoma, I'm Lyndall Stout, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.